Hi guys, welcome back to part 2 of my O.D.S.T remix track walkthrough. I hope you've just come from the kick and bass video that I just did the other week, and so now we're going to be looking at the next part of this track. So this will be the percussion. So we're talking claps, we're talking hats, rides, loops, all that kind of stuff. Yes, I use package loops. You know, don't at me, don't care. You know, I'm not having that conversation today. So I'm just going to basically go through how it sounds and how I made it work. So we're just going to loop a little bit of the track here that basically contains most of the loops and percussions in at any one time. I've removed kind of instruments and stuff that's going on around that, so you can focus more clearly on what the percussion sounds like and the kind of drive and the groove that it adds to the track. So take a listen. Maybe I didn't remove those. All right, give me a second. I'll just take those out now. Okay, here we go. So if we take out the kick and bass, just the percussion on its own will sound something like this. So let's just tell you what. Let's just put the kick in, just to kind of give you guys more of an idea about what it sounds like with a kick, so you can really judge if it works or not. And we'll start off with the one at the top. So we'll start off with the clap. Claps for me are something I always spend way too much time on trying to get right, because they're so important. For me, that's the most important part of percussion, alongside your snare. But that's just my opinion. Let's just take a quick look at how that sounds like with just a kick and the clap. So how was that done? Let's have a look, see what I used. Don't know what sample pack this is from. Can't remember, but quite a long tail on that actually. And this is something I always generally find myself doing is taking samples and pitching them down to get them to fit in. It's not always this much. Sometimes it's quite a bit more subtle, but I find that it's definitely one of the quickest ways to get a good sound that fits in with your kick and your bass easier, because quite often I find they're just too high. And they don't sit right. So if I remove this, we'll give you an example. We'll see if you can hear the difference. See, that's the original pitch that this sample came in. It's just way fatter. It's just way fatter with a bit of pitch on it. In my opinion, you pretty much see. I'm guessing most of my samples for percussion have some kind of pitch on, but we'll get to those in a minute. So first thing I've got is just a Pro Q. Take out all the lows, a little bit of attenuation and boosting there, and a cut. So let's see what the difference sounds like with these. It's just a lot more tidy. Now there is a little bit of stereo added to this 25%. I'm not a huge fan of monoing claps. I feel like they should be there to kind of add a little bit of width on your kick, which is why I put the reverb in. So there's a fair amount of a little bit of distortion on this. Not too much. Doesn't really need it. It was the original sample was already distorted to an extent. Again, another SSL channel strip. This one makes quite, for me, this is the plugin that really kind of makes this this whole sound really work. And the pièce de résistance for this sound, the thing that really kind of just adds that finishing touch, is this touch of reverb. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this plugin. I know a lot of people are. But quite often I find myself being drawn to different plugins like your Valhallas and your Arts Acoustics and stuff like that. But for this, in this use case, it works. I managed to get something out of it that for me absolutely works perfectly. I've got zero early reflections on, little bit of stereo. I mean, it's quite big. It's quite, you know, it's got, what's the wetness here? It's 80% wet and 100% on the dry, so it's quite big for what it is, and the size is there and stuff. So it's not a small reverb. You really will hear the difference. But you know, that's fine if you're making EDM, but I'm not making EDM, so I wanted it to be a, you know, a little bit of a tail on it. I mean, that tail is 0.9 seconds, which is quite long. I feel it's quite long for a recurring clap, but it works. So yeah, that's pretty much the clap. Only 4 plugins. Again, like I say in the previous video, I'll say it again, less is quite often more, and even more so with the open hi-hat. Now, open hi-hat must be the simplest and quickest sound to get into a mix well, in my opinion. So all it literally needed was this, you know, one channel strip. Really just puts it straight in the middle of that mix where it needs to be. It's fully monoed and a little bit panned to the left because it obviously it will be competing somewhat with the ride, which I'm now going to put on here. On this, it's just again camel fat, not even any real distortion on here, but listen to the difference this makes. Really just brings it up to the mix. This is a fantastic plugin. I know you can't buy this anymore. I know it's been discontinued, but you can still get it for free on some free VST websites. So definitely recommend checking it out if you get the time. And the last thing on this one is Fab Filter. I've taken out obviously a lot of the bottom end because the ride doesn't really need any of this, because you want it. This is where you want it to hit, right? Well, that's where I always want it to hit. I mean, this is without any EQ. If I can take off the camel fat, so that's the sound as it is. There is a reversed one going on here, which is what where you're hearing that kind of click from. So if I just mute that, that just sounds like a kind of a hollowy, reverbed, you know, bit of a mess, really. So, but with obviously your EQ taking out all of this stuff. Sits nicely with the kick, add the clap in. You know, it's really quite straightforward. You really shouldn't, in my opinion, be spending, especially with hard trance, spending too much time on these kind of percussive elements. You probably will want to make slight tweaks towards the end of the mix just to really get it to fit. So when you're doing kind of initial work, you shouldn't be spending too long to kind of get it fitting in. And if it doesn't fit in after like 10 minutes, then you're using the wrong sound. So try and stick to, you know, a tight regimen when you're choosing track sounds, because quite often I can just get bogged down and I could easily spend 3 hours choosing a clap if I'm not careful, and that's not a productive way to spend your time. So yeah, we'll move on now to loop 1. Now, there are 4 loops in this, but if I zoom out, this is the whole track. You'll see it at no point do all 4 loops play. And loop 2 and loop 4 only play in like either intro parts of the track or in this part here, which is kind of your breakdown and again your outro. So we're going to look at loop 1 and 3 first, and then we'll look at loops 2 and 4 afterwards, because they play in they perform different functions, and that's why they're basically put in different parts of the track. So we'll start off with loop 1. We'll just play this section here. So I pretty much live by Slice X for cutting and sequencing loops. I just think it's by far and away the easiest plugin I've ever found. I'm sure, you know, that you guys will use your own devices for slicing loops, but I definitely think if you're an FL user especially, definitely give Slice X a try if you haven't tried it already. Again, let's see if I pitched this down. Did I pitch this down? No, I didn't. Okay, that actually makes a change for me. Title loop 145. Yeah, I have no idea where I found this loop, but as you can see, I have This is the MIDI sequence for it. So I have changed it somewhat from obviously what it was initially, and this is how it comes across. So the loops, you'll see I've got a separator in there. It sections them off from the clap and the hi-hat and the ride. Now these all send to a loop bus. So this has obviously got a Dodge Pro on it just to give it a little bit of sidechain to kind of give the kick a bit more room to breathe. And then you've obviously got a filter just to kind of, I do like filtering loops parts. And then there's a glitch which has for some reason or another failed to load, but that really doesn't make a difference for the purposes of this video. All of the percussion is sent through to the percussion send, as I mentioned earlier, and then obviously going through to a drum smash which is matched in with the kicks and stuff from the previous video. So we won't go into that. So let's just quickly look at what I did on this loop. So loop 1. First things first again. Yeah, I know. Camel Crusher, or Camel Fat, sorry. This one I filtered it down using a bandpass filter to everything below, what is that set to? 5K basically. So, and then there is, I've mashed it with tube and mechanical distortion, a little bit of compression as well. I actually really quite like the compressor on this. So this will be a completely different sound when I take this off. I mean, that just sounds like just a straightforward hat loop, but when you add your distortion, it really kind of brings up those lower mid-range frequencies that weren't there before, and it just sits really nicely with the kick. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could use this loop without it, but it would perform a completely different function in your mix. And then next is the Dodge Pro. Now this is basically essentially taking the plate, doing essentially a gated effect. Just kind of tightens it up a little bit. Don't want too much of the sounds bleeding across. It essentially is giving other percussive elements more room to breathe. And then again, obviously a solid state E-channel, EQ and channel strip, just to finish off the sound. So that's loop 1, and now we're going to skip to loop 3. I mean, pretty much exactly the same, just instead of a Dodge Pro, it's got a Fab Filter Pro Q on it. So let's have a look again. So different kind of bandpass on this bandpass filter. On this one, I've filtered out everything below 226, let it go right the way up to 20k. Again, tube distortion, a little bit of mech, a little bit of exciter on there. Compressor, tiny amount. Again, not doing a massive amount, but this will change the complete way this sounds. Really brings out the top end on that one there, and then obviously this is a completely different EQ curve. Everything below 400. This will sound quite horrible, I reckon, when I take the 400 out. Actually, doesn't sound too bad, but it's definitely needed anyway. And then the E channel as well. It's amazing the difference just 3 plugins can make, isn't it? So let's hear that in with loop 1 and the bass. Okay, so we're now going to slightly change over. So that's loops 1 and 3. So we're going to go to part of the intro now where there's loops 1, 2, and 4. So this doesn't have the bass line. This is the intro of the track. So there's different sounds going on, and it's not quite as mad. So we're gonna add in this loop. We'll start off with loop 1, loop 2. Start off loop 2. Yeah, what a surprise. Absolute max distortion going on here in the Camel Audio Camel Crusher. I mean, you can really hear it. Totally changes that sound. And then you've got, again, another E channel. Sounds really quite horrible when you take the channel out. Really kind of resonant-y and harsh. And then adding this in with EQs and some filter cut-offs really kind of just tames that sound, brings it down to where it should be in the mix. Again, nothing too complicated going on here. And then loop 4. Yeah, I was kind of going for a really kind of hard techno Schranz vibe when I first started this track, and then I quickly realized that I was going to struggle to get this loop working well with like bass line and the other elements that I needed to put in, given that it's a remix. So it basically only really happens in certain select parts of the track. But I do really like this loop, and I can definitely see myself reusing this loop in future tracks, 100%. So we'll quickly go through this. Now again, what a surprise, Camel Crusher and SSL E channel. Camel Crusher, the difference this makes. I think this loop was already quite distorted actually. Is this the right one? Yeah. Oh, I don't know, kick sample. I think I kicked the sample to kick and then just stole the loop out of it, and I can't remember where from though. So if we take away the Camel Crusher, it sounds like this. Yeah, so you can hear the kick. Yeah, you can still hear the kick in there slightly. But then when you layer the kick, my own kick over it, you can't, it just takes up that space. So yeah, just a bit more distortion on there, and SSL E channel again, just to kind of polish off the sound. Really kind of, this one really kind of brings it out, opens the sound up a lot. It's quite dull there, but when you add this back in, okay, and then there's just a slight dip here. How many dB is this? This is 4.6 dB taking this out. So if I just copy this value, hear the difference of this cut. Bit crunchy there. I mean, you could leave that in. You could definitely not make that cut if you didn't want to, if you wanted that kind of sound, but I didn't in this case. A bit too much Schranz going on there for me. So when you put all of these elements in the intro, bear in mind this is in the intro part of the track. And there you go. That's pretty much everything. I'm not going to bother talking about crashes. I don't consider them part of the whole percussion thing that this video is intended to talk about. So I'm going to leave this video there. Please check out the next one, which will be going through all of these wonderful mixer tracks here. So yeah, bleepers, acids, arps, leads, all that kind of stuff. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated, a little bit more going on, but we'll cover that in the next video. Hope to see you there, guys. Thanks for watching.